The first funeral for the victim of the Hunter Valley bus crash. What the failed coup against Putin could mean for the war in Ukraine. And a shocking health scare for the Duchess of York.
Live from Sydney, 7 News with Ann Sanders.
Good afternoon. Hundreds of people have gathered to remember Angus Craig, one of 10 wedding guests killed in the Hunter Valley bus crash. It's the first of many funerals to be held over coming weeks. Among the mourners, the bride and groom, who now have the unthinkable task of farewelling 10 of their closest friends. Annie Pullar was there.
Good afternoon. Family, friends and colleagues have formally farewelled engineer Angus Craig, remembering the 28-year-old as an adored son, much-loved brother and soon-to-be uncle. Hundreds turned out to the Shoalhaven Memorial Gardens, including his good mates Matty Edsall and Mitchell Gaffney. The last time they were with Angus Craig was at their wedding on June 11. Now they're faced with the agonising reality of attending 10 close friends' funerals and enduring pain over and over again. For Angus Craig's family, their grief has been immeasurable. His sister Georgia fought back tears as she spoke of her little brother, reflecting on a driven young man with an infectious smile who loved water sports, but most of all loved his family.
How cruel is this loss? A lovely, well-mannered, gorgeous boy who had matured incredibly to a fun-loving, responsible, thoughtful and good-looking man has been lost.
The engineer was nearly 2 years into a relationship with his loving girlfriend Bella. They had moved in together just 5 weeks before his life was cruelly cut short.
I am forever a better person for having loved and been loved by you, Angus.
Over the coming weeks, there will be a procession of funerals across the country for the 10 people killed in the Hunter Valley bus crash. On Wednesday, the Singleton community will come together for junior Dr. Beck Mullen, who leaves behind fiancé Sam Howard. He was one of 35 guests on the bus and suffered extensive injuries, released from hospital just days ago. During this mourning period, friends and families of the 10 victims don't want their deaths to be overshadowed by the tragedy that took them away. They want their lives to be celebrated and say closure is still a long way off.
Vladimir Putin's leadership is on shaky ground, according to American authorities, after the Russian president avoided an armed uprising. They've suggested he may retaliate against the exiled leader of the Wagner rebel group, even after reaching an uneasy truce.
The Game of Thrones philosophy applies here. If you go for the king, you better kill the king. Prigozhin didn't do that. I don't think he'll last 60, 90 days, frankly, because Putin, at his dark heart, is a never forgive, never forget kind of person.
The attempted mutiny could mark a turning point for Putin, but experts say he'll do everything he can to consolidate power. Let's go to Chief Reporter Chris Reason now. Chris, good afternoon. What now for Putin? How will this affect his hold on power in Russia?
Well, good afternoon. And many experts are predicting this will quite simply spell the beginning of the end of Vladimir Putin's hold on power. This has fundamentally shaken his regime, that a freelance army could march into Russia, take control of a city that was a key command and control centre for Russia's military, then move with lightning speed to within 200 kilometres of Moscow without facing any opposition or taking a single casualty. It was an extraordinary day, and it will have Putin's supporters, Russia's elite and the media, and indeed the civilian population all questioning how secure his grip on the presidency really is. Putin has been exposed, he will be rattled, and his enemies will be circling. There hasn't been a moment like this in his 24 years in leadership. The stunning irony, Anne, and all, is that the war Putin launched to end Ukraine's presidency might instead end his own.
Well, Chris, what sort of impact could this have on the war in Ukraine?
Well, that's uncertain, but common sense, Anne, says it can only help. You've got Yevgeny Prigozhin and his Wagner army in disarray. Prigozhin is in exile in Belarus. His 25,000 troops are leaderless and uncertain if they face charges for treason. And that, as Russia's frontline troops in Ukraine will be sitting in the trenches completely demoralised, knowing that their military leaders are distracted and in disarray back home. So, in short, this gives Ukraine a critical political opportunity to ramp up their spring offensive, which hasn't been going well to this point. Today, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese used the opportunity to throw another $110 million Australian dollars in military support to assist them. We have to wait and see what kind of advantage Ukraine can make of all of that.
Chris Reason reporting. Former Labor leader Simon Crean is being remembered as a fierce advocate for workers and a loyal servant. There have been tributes from both sides of the political spectrum following his shock death at the age of 74. Our political reporter Rachel Baxter has more.
Good afternoon. Well, he was a former ACTU president and Labor opposition leader who served in a range of ministries under multiple prime ministers, including leading the opposition during some of the Howard years. His death has been described as an enormous shock, his family confirming he passed away while hiking in Germany at the age of 74. A Labor leader who never became Prime Minister has been praised for his devotion to the Labor Party and the union movement, as well as his gutsy decision to oppose Australian participation when the US chose to invade Iraq.
He showed extraordinary courage to oppose the Iraq war, but make clear his support for the men and women who serve us in uniform. Simon Crean will be given a state funeral. We'll make those announcements at an appropriate time. But today we just pass on our sincere condolences.
Politics doesn't have the Hall of Fames that our football codes have, but if they did, Simon Crean would be in the Political Hall of Fame and he would be in the Labor Hall of Fame for his contributions over 4 decades. It's quite the shock.
Former Prime Minister John Howard also releasing a statement. He says Simon never surrendered his true Labor beliefs. He could work in a bipartisan way when the national interest needed it. This was especially in evidence when we travelled together to Bali after the terror attack in 2002.
A very honourable person. You could shake hands with Simon and you knew that he would honour his word. And I had a great deal of respect for him.
His family have said Simon was a fierce advocate for working Australians and dedicated his life to making a difference, though his greatest achievements were as a father to his daughters and a loving husband to Carol. They were married for more than 50 years.
A truck driver has been arrested over a dangerous manoeuvre in Sydney's northwest. He was filmed crossing double lines into the wrong lane to overtake 2 cars. Police tracked the driver down using this dashcam vision and he's being questioned over the incident. Embattled accounting firm PwC has appointed a new Australian CEO, British executive Kevin Burrows, as it deals with multiple scandals. Acting CEO Kristen Steubens today addressing a government inquiry.
It's also important to acknowledge that we don't always get things right. We deeply regret the breach of confidential federal tax policy information that happened around 8 years ago, and I deeply apologise for that.
PwC has also sold its government consultancy wing for $1 to private equity investor Eveleigh Funds, which specialises in rebuilding struggling companies. Support for the Indigenous voice to Parliament has slumped to its lowest level this year, according to the latest news poll. But the Prime Minister is confident of a surge in support in the coming months. Political reporter Jennifer Beshwati has this report from Canberra.
Yes, good afternoon. Well, for the first time since its announcement, more people now oppose the voice to Parliament than support it. Meaning, if it were held this weekend, according to the latest news poll, it will fail. 2,300 people were asked if they support changing the Constitution to include an Indigenous voice to Parliament. 43% said yes, but 47% said no. 10% are undecided.
Until the Prime Minister can explain properly what the voice is, it shouldn't proceed. The Australian public is not ready for the voice because the Prime Minister hasn't given them the detail. And Australians won't vote for something they don't understand.
But the Prime Minister is hopeful more Australians will come around once the full campaign kicks off.
If not now, when? This will be the first referendum that's held this century. And so every Australian will have the opportunity, and I'm very confident that Australians will embrace that opportunity, say yes in the referendum in the last quarter of this year.
The vote will be held sometime between October and December.
The Duchess of York, Sarah Ferguson, has undergone surgery after being diagnosed with breast cancer. Doctors noticed a growth during a routine mammogram, and the 63-year-old had to spend several days in hospital for the operation. She's now recovering at home with her family in Windsor. A friend saying her prognosis is looking good thanks to early detection. Amber Layla joins us now with the latest on Sydney's weather. Hi there, Amber. We've got some warnings in place this afternoon.
Good afternoon, Anne. Yes, a warning for damaging winds is currently in place for parts of Sydney, with strong and gusty westerlies recorded across Sydney today. Winds reached 93 kilometres per hour at Bellambi overnight. These conditions are forecast to continue developing across southern parts of the city and the coast this evening. In terms of temperatures across Sydney today, it hovered around 18 to 19 degrees, though it reached 20 degrees at the airport and at Cronulla under clear skies. In those westerlies, though, it often felt several degrees cooler than this. The gusty conditions have been generated by a front that's brushing the southeast. While it should track offshore tomorrow, a large rain band is set to extend across the state midweek. More details on what that means for Sydney a little bit later, Anne.
See you then, Amber. Thank you. Still to come in 7's afternoon news is a civil war brewing in one of Sydney's major crime families. Gangland figures arrested. Deck chairs flung into the air, a cruise ship caught in a powerful storm, and he's not shy. A baby seal learns how to hang 10. You're watching 7's 4 p.m. Sydney News, and this is a view from Cronulla, where right now it's 18 degrees. Qantas is making it easier for Australian travellers to redeem and even get a refund for their COVID flight credits. More than $400 million worth of credits haven't been used, and they're due to expire at the end of the year. The airline is offering to double frequent flyer points for those who use them now, but you can also cash them in. Customers bombarded the consumer watchdog with complaints about the national carrier. Raptor Squad police have made some major arrests in what they believe has fractured the notorious Alameddine crime family. Officers managing to bring in the new Sydney-based leader of the underworld group. Here's Liam Tapper.
Good morning. Well, police believe the notorious Alameddine crime family may be fractured after a wild brawl took place on Wednesday last week. 6 members of the notorious crime family came to blows at Westfield in Sydney's CBD. That afternoon, 2 men were arrested, but Friday morning, Raptor Squad swooped on a number of addresses across Western Sydney, making 4 more arrests. In North Parramatta, $30,000 worth of cash was found, along with 2 firearms in the neighbouring driveway. Those 2 firearms were taken away for forensic testing. At North Parramatta, 30-year-old Ali El Mabayad, he was arrested, and police believe that he is now the Sydney-based leader of the Alameddine crime family. He was charged with the fray and will face court later this week. Police say it's a major breakthrough in the ongoing gangland war in Sydney.
They've acted like animals in a very busy shopping centre. They're all well known to us. We've got clear CCTV footage of the incident. They're all very well known to us. They're all either associates or related to a serious organised criminal network.
Now, New South Wales police believe that this internal infighting within the Alameddine crime family has been brought about in large part due to a leadership vacuum. A number of high-profile Alameddine family members are offshore. Rafat Alameddine, the leader, he is believed to be in Lebanon at the moment. Now, New South Wales police, they have said that whilst they're happy there is fighting within the family, they are concerned for what this means to the public and whether there will be more gangland fighting on the streets of Sydney.
Millions of Americans are in the firing line as tornadoes threaten homes across several states. This was one of them this morning, residents watching helplessly as it tore through properties in Greenwood, Indiana, sending debris flying. There are severe storm warnings in place for Washington, D.C., Baltimore and Philadelphia, with heavy rain, lightning and hail expected over the coming days. A freak storm in Florida sent passengers on this cruise ship scrambling as deck chairs became projectiles. Before the ship had even set sail, wild winds and rain swept through without warning, forcing people in the upstairs lounge to seek shelter. But as quickly as the storm came, it went. 11 people have been injured after a flight was aborted on takeoff at Hong Kong's international airport. It's believed one of the plane's tyres burst due to overheating, prompting an evacuation. And the passengers were hurt going down escape slides. 2 are still in hospital receiving treatment. Seals tend to keep their distance from humans in the water, but not this pup, who's delighted surfers at a beach in San Diego. Day after day, the creature has been hitching a ride on their boards and showing off his surfing skills. When he's done with one, he'll move on to the next. His unusually friendly behaviour has experts puzzled. Next in 7's Afternoon News, we'll have sport with Mel McLaughlin, including the Dragons knocked back Ben Hunt's attempt to leave the embattled club. Also, Luke Brooks has found his new home after the Tigers. Plus, the wife of one of the victims of the submarine tragedy shares her heartbreak.
Tonight on 7 News with Mark Ferguson.
Truckee danger, the videos that forced police to act. The Russian squad are kicked out of Canberra and the homes digging deep to slash power bills.
Time for sport now with Mel McLaughlin. Mel, Ben Hunt's going nowhere.
Hello to you, and yeah, you're right. The Dragons are digging their heels in, refusing to grant their captain a release to leave the club immediately. His teammates are frustrated the club is in the situation where they could lose their best player midway through the year.
Obviously, I don't know what's going on, but yeah, it'd be disappointing to see him leave.
Feel for Dozer, you know. Obviously, I want him to be here, and but he obviously has got to make his decision, and between the club and him.
NRL CEO Andrew Abdo admits the situation is an ugly look for the game. They hope to reform the transfer system as soon as next season.
I don't think that this is what fans want. I don't think we should be talking about transfers in the middle of the season.
Luke Brooks is set to leave the Tigers for Manly on a 3-year deal from next season. James Tedesco blames himself for the Roosters' narrow loss to Canberra at Allianz Stadium last night. The champion fullback failed to defuse 2 bombs in the first half that led directly to Raiders' tries.
It's got to be better there. Got to be confident going up and taking it. So those 2 tries cost us in the end.
Yeah, I think that's harsh. You know, Teddy's got the best defusal rates of fullbacks over year on year.
From 18-0 down, Joey Manu ignited the Roosters with 2 brilliant tries, but the Green Machine held on 20-18 despite losing Josh Papali'i to a hamstring injury. And Broncos fullback Reece Walsh has been referred straight to the NRL judiciary, accused of directing vile abuse at referee Chris Butler. A ban of 2 games or more would rule the Maroon Star out of Origin 3. Well, just like the men's first test, the women's Ashes is set up for a final day showdown. Beth Mooney made 80 before a batting collapse left Australia defending 267 runs. With England flying, Ash Gardner removed double century maker Tammy Beaumont with her first ball, then took 2 more wickets in a match-turning spell.
To her credit, has improved her off-spin bowling out of sight in the last couple of years, and we know that she can settle into one end in this format and bowl the ball in the right areas exactly where we want it. So.
England are 5 for 116, needing another 152 runs. Marnus Labuschagne will be OK for Wednesday's second test after copping a knock on the finger in the nets. Alex de Minaur feels calm and confident heading into Wimbledon after this morning's tight straight sets defeat to Carlos Alcaraz in the Queen's Club final.
How calm I've been on the court, and when I'm in that kind of mindset and attitude, I can beat anyone, and even if things don't go my way, I'm content.
Alcaraz regained the world #1 ranking from Novak Djokovic before starting at the All England Club next Monday. Well, there's always trouble at MotoGP's Cathedral. Aussie Jack Miller was the first casualty on lap 2 of the Dutch Grand Prix.
Miller's lost the front of his KTM in the first corner, and he just looks full of frustration.
Yeah, reigning champion Francesco Bagnaia extended his lead in the title race with his 4th win of the season. And the benefit of an Olympics coming to Australia is starting to show for the sports always fighting the funding battle. Water polo have secured a 5-year naming rights sponsor of the Stingers and Sharks, vital for taking on powerhouse European and American nations.
It's really important to get us out there, get some international exposure and just being able to allow us to compete at the highest level.
Our water polo teams haven't won an Olympic medal since the Stingers' bronze at London 2012. And what about this? Ahead of Brisbane, we all remember Sydney 2000 and our Aussie women with that famous gold medal.
You sure do. Thanks a lot, Mel.
Thanks.
The wife of one of the deep-sea explorers who died on board the doomed Titan submarine has shared her heartbreak. Christine Darwood lost her husband and son in the implosion.
I think I lost hope when we passed the 96 hours mark. But my daughter, for example, she didn't lose hope until the call with the Coast Guard, when they basically informed us that they found debris.
Ms. Darwood says her son brought his Rubik's Cube with him on the trip to try and break a world record.
He would not go anywhere without his Rubik's Cube. His best was 12 seconds or something like that.
She says the whole family is overwhelmed with grief. This afternoon's top stories are next, including the first funeral for a Hunter bus crash victim family and friends mourn. Are Australia's poor getting poorer? New data on the cost of living crunch. A Starbucks customer caught on camera losing his cool. And the Duchess of York's shock cancer diagnosis. Those stories and more next.
Live from Sydney, 7 News.
Welcome back. One of the victims of the Hunter Valley bus crash, Angus Craig, is being remembered for his sweet, kind nature as he was laid to rest in southern New South Wales today. The 28-year-old, one of 10 people killed when a bus carrying wedding guests rolled, is the first to be given a funeral. Relatives have been anxiously waiting to bury their loved ones as authorities tried to identify the bodies. Experts claim the failed rebellion in Russia has exposed weaknesses in Vladimir Putin's leadership. Some have suggested it's likely he'll retaliate against his rebel rival, even after a truce was struck. US correspondent Tim Lester has more.
From the moment the weekend's short-lived coup attempt began in Russia, there has been a new question mark over the hold-on power of Vladimir Putin. Now, here in Washington, the Biden administration is also questioning his leadership.
Now, what we've seen is Russia having to defend Moscow, its capital, against mercenaries of its own making. So in and of itself, that's extraordinary. And in so doing, we've also seen rise to the surface profound questions about the very premises for this Russian aggression against Ukraine that Prigozhin surfaced very publicly, as well as a direct challenge to Putin's authority.
For Putin, the coup attempt doubly embarrassing. First, because the forces of Yevgeny Prigozhin made it so far to within 200 kilometres of Moscow and also managed to seize the southern headquarters of the Russian army, which controls the Ukraine battle. But also troubling for Vladimir Putin because he'd said that he would deal with those who were heading towards Moscow. In fact, what he's done is a deal with Prigozhin that lets Prigozhin go to Belarus, the neighbouring country that negotiated the truce, and also does nothing to punish the soldiers who backed him.
This presents a distraction, a loss of focus for the Russians. That may help the Ukrainians on the battlefield.
This, as a retired American admiral here, suggests that Vladimir Putin will now be out to kill his old ally, Prigozhin.
You know, the Game of Thrones philosophy applies here. If you go for the king, you better kill the king. Prigozhin didn't do that. He now is going to be isolated from the 35,000 fighters that have protected him. He's like a snake whose head has been cut off from its body. I don't think he'll last 60, 90 days, frankly, because Putin, at his dark heart, is a never forgive, never forget kind of person. He'll do everything he can to wreak vengeance on Prigozhin.
Today, US President Joe Biden has discussed the Russia situation with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky. Mr. Zelensky tweeting that he found the conversation with Mr. Biden on the topic to be inspirational.
A Russian diplomat who was squatting at an embassy site in Canberra has packed up and left following a High Court ruling. Earlier this month, the federal government passed legislation terminating Moscow's lease on the land near Parliament due to national security concerns. Russia argued the laws were invalid and unconstitutional, but this morning Justice Jago threw out the bid to stop the Commonwealth entering the land.
Australia supports the law. Russia hasn't been real good at upholding the law in recent times.
The Prime Minister says no decision has been made on the future of the land. Former Labor leader Simon Crean has died while hiking during a business trip in Germany. The news came as a shock to the party faithful. The Prime Minister saying he made a tremendous contribution before, during and after his time in Parliament.
Well, he was a giant of the Labor movement. He was tireless. He was someone who was just taken from us far too young.
He's survived by Carol, his wife of more than 50 years, and his 2 daughters. Crean was 74. Cost of living pressures have left people struggling to make ends meet, with data showing some of Australia's lowest income earners are suffering the worst. Parents, meanwhile, are being warned daycare fees could increase again if the union gets its way. Paul Caddick has the story.
Good afternoon. With some parents already being put on notice for an increase in childcare fees, warnings they could go even higher as a much-needed pay rise for childcare staff is worked out. Now, there's agreement about just how important that pay rise is, with the industry suffering major staffing shortages, which has led to so many centres having to put a cap on enrolments. The Childcare Alliance suggests a 25% wage rise would mean an 18% fee rise after subsidies. That's $34 a week more for a low-income single parent. So it's calling for the federal government, so taxpayers, to spend what could be a couple of $1 billion to directly fund that wage rise.
We really wanted to understand what the impact would be on families and the sector more broadly. And really clearly, it showed that unless there's some government support, there would very clearly be an impact on families.
Parents group The Parenthood also calling for the government to fund the rise to spare parents with kids in childcare any further increases.
Parents in Australia already pay some of the most expensive fees in the world for early education, and it is simply not sustainable for parents to be paying substantially more.
As a new report from Anglicare has given new insight into how the rising cost of living has been hitting Australia's lowest paid workers and their families, finding that a full-time worker earning the minimum wage has just $57 left after paying their essential weekly bills. A family of 4 having just $73 left at the end of the week.
A fleet of Australian-built ferries will soon start swanning along the Parramatta River, but they won't be made in New South Wales as promised by the government. The opposition saying it's a betrayal, as Amelia Brace reports.
Well, the Premier was up early this morning out on the Parramatta River to announce the next generation of ferries set to carry millions of passengers for the next 3 decades will be built in Australia. The 7 new ferries will replace the River-Cat fleet, which has served the route since 1992, while the River-class ferries will also be retained.
We're pleased to be replacing them with Australian-built ferries that will actually use 40% less diesel and are future-proofed for conversion to hybrid or electric operation.
The $49 million contract has been awarded to a Hobart firm, with the Labor government vowing to end the offshore construction that plagued the Indonesian-built River-class with dozens of safety issues.
We've been going through a process of dealing with cheap, nasty, foreign-built vessels with too many safety deficiencies.
But the opposition says this is a broken promise because Chris Minns made an election commitment to build the ferries here in New South Wales.
They promised these would be made in New South Wales, and New South Wales under Chris Minns has been shafted.
The Premier says no New South Wales businesses applied for this contract, adding that this is still a big step in the right direction.
Vision has emerged of a customer lashing out at a Starbucks cafe in Melbourne. The man can be seen lifting a wooden chair above his head and then bringing it down onto a display cabinet as staff back away. The incident occurred at the Starbucks outlet on Elizabeth Street in the city centre, and it was posted to social media yesterday. Heart-stopping vision has surfaced of a truck driver dangerously overtaking 2 cars. He crossed double lines to do it, and police are taking action. Tom Hartley is investigating.
41-year-old Coda Mockbell from Liverpool was arrested and brought here to Blacktown Police Station this morning after admitting to police that he was the one behind the wheel of this truck. Have a look at this dash cam video. Now, this was the point of view of a ute travelling along Old Northern Road at Dural around lunchtime, and this was on Friday. In the video, you can see the truck making a really dangerous manoeuvre, crossing the double lines, overtaking cars, and almost colliding head-on into another, which was forced off the road. And we're told this incident was initially reported to local police on Friday, but they didn't follow it up. Now, the traffic police took it over this morning as the video began circulating on social media. They were able to track the driver down, get him into the police station for questioning and to be charged, and also tested for alcohol and drugs. He returned a positive result for cocaine. Well, you're facing some really serious allegations. After admitting to police it was him behind the wheel, he didn't say anything to us as he left the police station, apart from telling us to go away.
Can you move me?
His licence has been suspended for a fortnight. On his bail conditions, he won't be able to sit behind the wheel of any motor vehicle. Mockbell will face a dangerous driving charge at Parramatta Court at the end of July.
The Duchess of York has had to have emergency surgery after being diagnosed with breast cancer. It was detected during a routine mammogram. Her friends say she's recovering well. Europe Bureau Chief Hugh Whitfeld has the latest.
The Duchess was discharged just in the last 24 hours from King Edward VII's Hospital here in central London, a hospital long favoured by members of the royal family. She appeared on Channel 7's Sunrise just a fortnight ago. There was no sense that anything was up, so this does appear to have transpired very quickly. Fergie's representatives confirming the breast cancer was picked up during a routine mammogram and the cancer was in its early stages. She has undergone surgery. It has been successful. Her prognosis described as good. The Duchess is now back at home in Windsor at Royal Lodge, where she lives with her ex-husband, Prince Andrew. Her daughters have been out and about, Princess Beatrice at Royal Ascot, although Fergie wasn't there and normally she would be. Eugenie been at the Glastonbury Music Festival. Both are now said to be back at Windsor supporting their mother as she undergoes her recovery.
A record number of whales have been spotted along Australia's east coast this year. 5,000 of the marine mammals were counted in the annual census as they make their migration north. They're most plentiful off the coast of Port Stephens, Newcastle and Port Macquarie, and scientists say it's a promising sign for the future of conservation. We're live to ComSec for the latest on your money next. Then, big changes for blood donors, what you need to know. The Olympics online, our Aussie athletes gunning for gold. Sir Elton John takes the stage in the UK one last time, and it's 18 degrees in the city. Amber will have Sydney's forecast soon. Millions of Commonwealth Bank customers were affected by a nationwide outage this morning. The lender says there was an issue on its app, meaning many people were stranded at checkouts, unable to access or transfer their money. CommBank says it's urgently investigating the problem and has apologised for the inconvenience. Checking finance now with Laura Bezzarati at ComSec. Hi there, Laura. A volatile day on the share market.
Good afternoon, Anne. That's exactly right. We had quite a choppy session to start the week. We saw our market fall by 1/3%, hitting 3-month lows and falling for the 4th straight session today. Losses were quite broad-based across the sectors. We saw 2 of 11 sectors improving only, and financials were the biggest weight, with NAB led lower by leading the 4 major banks lower. We saw whiskey maker Lark Distilling also tumble, down 17% after downgrading sales forecasts due to falling consumer confidence. However, it wasn't all bad news. Gold miners were a major bright spot in the market, pushed higher by developments in Russia over the weekend, which strengthened commodity prices. Owner of IGA Supermarkets Metcash lifted 5% after posting solid profit results and continuing to do well despite cost of living pressures. Wesfarmers was another winner today, up 0.5% after upping its bid to buy non-surgical enhancements company Silk Laser for $180 million, and this saw Silk Laser up around 18% as well. And the Aussie dollar is weaker, buying 66.7 US cents. Anne?
Laura Bezzarati from ComSec. Thanks, Laura. Australians with tattoos will now be able to donate blood just 1 week after getting fresh ink, in a move to slash waiting times for people who need blood. Donors previously had to wait 4 months to roll up their sleeves again, but these new rules could produce an extra 10,000 life-saving donations each year. Lifeblood is struggling to meet demand across the country. Sir Elton John has closed out the Glastonbury Festival in the UK, playing an emotional set, the last of his world tour. The British rocker delighted 120,000 fans who'd gathered in the stifling heat to watch his swan song, treating them all to his hits from Tiny Dancer to I'm Still Standing. Blondie and Cat Stevens also performed on the festival's fifth and final day. Sydney's 6 p.m. news is coming up with Mike Ferguson. Hi there, Mike. What's the latest from the newsroom?
Yeah, good afternoon, Anne. Tonight in Sydney's northwest, this is the video that forced police to act. It happened last week, but he was still behind the wheel this morning. At 6, what he's accused of, and it's much more than just crossing double lines. The Premier proudest punch today, revealing the next fleet of Sydney ferries will be Australian-made. That after the service was plagued with issues when foreign-built vessels hit the water. And at 6, we'll have exclusive details about travel savings for seniors. Teachers accused of shaming young children over what's in their lunchboxes. We'll hear from a mother who says her son went hungry despite packing a well-balanced meal. And the households using the earth to help heat their homes and slash their power bills. We'll show you how it works, with calls for the technology to become mandatory for all new properties. And all that and plenty more, 7 News tonight at 6 o'clock.
See you then, Fergo. Thank you. Australian athletes are proving they can compete on the world stage in more than just regular sports. One of our very own crowned at the inaugural eSports Olympics.
A new breed of athlete, far from the gamer stereotype.
Got it! Oh my God. And Teo's done it. 3-1 tennis champion. Can she open the door and take home the trophy? One big thing can do it for Nigel.
This is the Olympic eSports Series in Singapore. 130 participants from more than 60 countries.
This is a really, really exciting time for all of us. And probably a historical moment as well.
Part of an Olympic strategy to embrace technology and remain relevant to young people.
We saw really the engagement. It was very short format, very nice to see. Inclusivity.
Chess, cycling, motorsport and dance, just some of the featured events.
This is for all the women that play video games, that play Just Dance. You are capable! And you're worth it.
Aussie Lucas Melissa took home top prize in the shooting.
Not many people can do what these players are doing.
You have lived the new Olympic motto, faster, higher, stronger, together.
The week of competition packed with Olympic favourites, including an opening and closing ceremony.
We are built on this new momentum to move forward. Thank you, and until we meet again.
Hinting at a return next year. Georgia Holland, 7 News.
Next in 7's afternoon news, Amber will be here with your very latest weather forecast.
Good afternoon, Andrea Pronomo here in the Sydney Blinds and Screens traffic chopper. Strong winds currently stopping us from leaving the airport this afternoon. We are hovering over it now. It's also taken out a tree and wires in Casula for the Hume Highway southbound at Old Currajong Road. For styling comfort all year round, head to Sydney Blinds and Screens. Extensive range, locally made and manufactured. Arrange a free measure and quote at sydneyblinds.com.au.
The new way to slash power bills, digging deep to tampon heating and cooling that never runs out. Only on 7 News at 6.
Sometimes it's the simple pleasures in life that give us the greatest joy, and a Hessian sack has provided hours of fun for a gorilla at the Melbourne Zoo. Much to Keeper's delight, the primate discovered she can put it on, wear it as a costume, go for a walk and wrestle with it too. The possibilities are endless. Time for more weather details now. Amber, when are those showers set to arrive?
Stage most likely on Wednesday, Anne, but until then we've got mostly fine weather on the way. In the city today we reached a top of 19 degrees. Right now it is 17, though in fresh west to southwesterlies it actually feels closer to 8. The satellite image shows a ridge of high pressure settling over northern New South Wales, bringing settled conditions to Sydney tomorrow, but a large rain band is set to arrive over the northeast, producing widespread showers for most of the state by Wednesday. Wednesday. Around the country tomorrow, Brisbane sunny and 23, a cloudy 13 on the way for Canberra, a possible shower in Melbourne, Hobart and Adelaide, mostly sunny tomorrow and 16 in Perth, tops of 32 in Darwin. But in Sydney tomorrow, 19 is the forecast top under partly cloudy skies with the chance of a shower or two arriving on Wednesday. We could see those light falls persist along the coastal fringe on Thursday, but then it's looking like a sunny end to the working week and we'll have more weather at 6 o'clock.
All right, Amber, thank you very much. And that is Sydney's 4 p.m. news for this Monday. Mark Ferguson will bring you 7 News at 6. I'm Ann Sanders. Stay with 7 for The Chase Australia. I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you for joining us. Have a great night.
Stream 7 News anytime, live and on demand on 7plus. And with 7news.com.au, you'll know the news now.